Hi, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 Questions Over Coffee. This is a great opportunity for me to sit and chat with somebody I'm really looking forward to a discussion with, and I do have a cup of coffee, so therefore, good opportunity for me to sit back, let her do the talking, and I'll do the coffee drinking. And today I'm talking to Karen Green, who was a buyer with Tesco. Have I got that right, Karen? And then you moved into the supply side where you were a sales director, and now you are an expert consultant and speaker, helping us all understand the buyer's mindset and how to go about doing things like, well, pricing and buying and things like that. So, Karen, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Welcome to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 Questions Over Coffee.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Terrific. Well, okay. I guess the first thing we have to sort of dive into is who is the person you're trying to help? What is it that we're all misunderstanding about buying that you're trying to help us to understand?
So, on the broadest scale, because whenever you talk to marketeers, they say you should niche it down. But on a broader scale, anybody who is trying to sell something, and you could be selling an idea to somebody, you could be selling a product or a service, or selling your business. So if you're doing an investor pitch, or even if you're trying to sell yourself at an interview, the principles behind the Buyerology theory work for any of those. So much as my target audience is obviously for my clients is more narrow than that, but this can work for anybody really who wants to sell more and sell better.
And what is it those people have done before you try and help them that have made where they've made mistakes in that? Is it just not understanding the process, or is it more than that?
It's more than that, and I found this statistic, and I ask lots of people. So I'll ask you the statistic, the number. So according
to a very sensible answer from me, will you?
According to Harvard Business Review, what percentage of business to business, because that's really what I work in, business to business corporate buyers, make the decision based on fact?
Yeah. So I'm going to have to say, according to Harvard Business Review, and I haven't read this article, but I would imagine it is a very, very low percentage. And I would imagine most people going into a buying situation think that the person buying is basing it on all of the facts. And I'd imagine it's basically on whether or not you smiled or did something to make them feel good or treated them like a human or something like that.
You're absolutely right. So they say about 5% of decisions.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, I'm afraid.
Based on fact, and that's the biggest mistake that I think I probably was making from day one of being a salesperson, because my personality is quite fact based. I'm quite interested in sales growth and numbers. So I would do all my research, and I'd look at the company, and I'd look at their values and their mission and their statistics and the market share. And I would know that relatively inside out. And if I didn't, I'd usually have somebody with me who did, like a category manager. And when I was sort of putting together the basis for my model, the Buyerology model, I actually realized that that's only 1/3 of the piece. The main part of it is, as we say, that buyers are human, and therefore what you've got to do is spend more time researching the person you're selling to as a human being than actually the corporation. And then the third pillar, which I think is quite interesting, and it's harder to research, is what is that human's interaction with the company they're working for. So, for example, I do a lot of work with food and drink companies selling into UK retail, because that's obviously my background. And you might get a buyer who's been there a long time, seen it all before, doesn't really want to rock the boat, and therefore you have to think about, well, they're not looking for promotion, they're going to be looking just to keep going, they've seen it all before. Or you might have somebody actually who's super ambitious, wants to change the world, quite happy to go and do things differently, and that can make quite a difference between the way you tailor things. So that's where you kind of, if you look at all three pillars, you will have a better chance. And it means that you can take your basic sales message, whatever that is, and tailor it according to the person. And that's the skill, that's the basis for the book, and that's the basis for what I work with clients on to make the difference.
That's interesting, and I think it's very reminiscent of my experience when I was first out of what I did and entered a world where I was being taught to be a manager briefly before I started sort of taking doing things with my own companies. But the one thing that I can remember a manager mentor of mine saying was, when I sort of provided somebody with some feedback, I was doing it based upon my understanding of something, which was all about, as you said, numbers. And this person looked at me and said, how did they take it? And I said, well, I didn't understand. He didn't seem to care about that. And he said, no, you have to tailor your message to what they care about, not what you care about. And it was I sat there and thought, well, that sounds so ridiculous. I mean, I was sort of, late 20s. I was one of those sort of, sitting there knowing everything, and then thinking, well, why on earth is this person telling me something like that? Because that's clearly rubbish. And it was absolutely the right advice, because people don't want to hear it based upon your understanding. They want to hear it based upon their understanding, don't they? And as communicators, the thing that we have to remember is that communication is what the listener does, not what we do. We can shout it from the rooftop, but if nobody's listening, we've communicated nothing.
It's true. And what's exciting, I think, now is the fact that the combination of having LinkedIn and having AI, and there's a couple of AI systems you can use. I use Humantix, there's also Crystal Nose, and there's a couple of others. You can go and analyze the buyer or the person that you want to sell to, because it might not be a corporate buyer, it might just be your boss, for example. And you can work out their personality based, yes. And Humantix uses the disc profiling. So you can then say, well, actually, I mean, I'm a relatively strong red personality. So, and I remember, a bit like you, when I was young at Tesco, my boss sitting me down and saying, you went and asked accounts first. He said, talk me through. And I went, well, I took it up, like you said, and I gave it to them, and I said, I need this. And he said, did you say good morning? And I went, might have done. Did you ask them how they were? And I'm like, well, why would I? I'm not interested. I don't care. And he said, I think if you built the relationship a bit better, you might understand, and you might get on better. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. But if you know your personality as well, so I know that I'm high red, I'm going to get to the point quite quickly. It's not entirely true, because I do have a bit of I in me as well. So I am relatively interested in people, but I think that's probably come as I've got older. And if you know your shortcomings or your chosen approach, and then you use something like Humantix, which really has changed the way I do, because I obviously work with quite a large number of clients, so I do a lot of discovery calls, and I can go onto LinkedIn, I can profile them in 30 seconds. I've got a fair idea what they're going to be like, and it just gives it the edge. It really does make a huge difference to the way I approach things. I'm not as good as I should be, in terms of tailoring my emails and tailoring this, that, and the other. And I was watching a webinar last week, actually, by Humantix, who were talking about how, if you've got a mailing list, I use HubSpot, and you've got, say, 1,000 people on it, you can segment it by type and all that kind of thing. And yes, I probably would do better. And their open click rates is amazing, because they do tailor it specifically to different types. But And I'm sure once AI gets a little bit better, then you just press a button and then it'll do it for us. But at the moment, it's a little bit woo-woo for me. But
I'm looking forward to the day that that on my behalf an AI buys everything I've already decided I want. Although at the moment I've got a son that does that for me, and I just discover things appearing through the post because he just sits and orders stuff that he's decided that I want.
oh, really?
Well, most of the stuff is for him. It's just my credit card. Anyway, so look, that takes me to the next thing, and I think you've got a really brilliant free offer that we can all tap into to sort of learn some of this stuff. And for this moment now, I'm going to show this ticker because I believe you have got a really valuable free offer, which I'm really excited about.
So yes, I wrote this is my second book actually, Recipe for Success, which was aimed at food companies. It's available on Amazon if you are interested. But this is a broader book. This is around know your buyer, sell more and sell better. And the first third of the book does go into understanding the why. So, understanding why are people more likely to be human in a corporate decision-making situation than driven by facts and figures. And then I get into the disc profiling and different ways that you can actually work out who your customer is, and to think about the three pillars. Because at the beginning I was saying we tend to focus on that third pillar about, well, the logical bit. We still need the logic, because if we don't have the logic, then the rest of it will fall apart, because we still, there still needs to be that factual basis. And then the final part of the book is thinking about, well, how do you go out and do all those different things you might need to do within business development and sales, such as prospecting, sending the cold emails, having the meetings, closing the sale, getting repeats. All of that part is there, but with the underpin of how do you tailor it and how do you use Buyerology to make a difference. So that's the book. It is available on Amazon, but yes, if you drop me a line, I will arrange for and an address. Actually, I'll need your address.
So drop a request and an address to Karen at Buyerology. That's BUYEROLOGY.co.uk, and that will be winging its way to you, which is a fantastic free offer. I love it.
Yeah, please do. I get the message out, because I am genuinely very passionate about what I do, and I think the more people who get that understanding. And as I say, you don't have to be an entrepreneur or in business for it to be useful. I mean, some of the, I don't know when toddlers actually get their personality. In fact, I should look that up, because I've never thought about that. But I've always thought, if you're going to sell something to a toddler, then that's probably, and succeed. Selling an idea to a toddler is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do.
Well, I think it's an old truism that we're all selling all the time. Even if what you're trying to do is persuade your significant other to go out to the cinema, there's an interaction, a selling and buying interaction going on there, and it's continuous, and we all ought to be better at it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would make for happier relationships, I suspect, if we did actually do some of that. So, was there a particular book or course that actually sort of started you to think about? Obviously, other than the two books that you've mentioned that you wrote, but was there a particular book or course that actually started you in this journey of understanding how buying is such an important part of life? So
I would say the best book I've ever read on this is Never Split the Difference. And I've forgotten who wrote it now. Oh God, I don't know. I was looking on my shelf to see if I had it. I think it's packed away, because I'm interested. It'll come back to me in a minute. But it's written by he was an FBI negotiator, so he's not. He wasn't at the time a commercial person. I mean, he does do a lot of training now. But it's a brilliant book, because there's a lot of storytelling in it, and he does talk about negotiating with with hostage situations and things like that. So it is quite interesting. But then he does get into, you know, how to negotiate a pay rise, or how to negotiate with your significant other, as you're describing. It is a really good book, and it will come to me in a minute as to who's written it. It's a major bestseller.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Because once again, that, you know, I think we're discovering, you know, not that all buying situations are hostage taking situations, but I can understand with the links between those two, because obviously what you've got is two people who are trying to reach some sort of an agreement, and I guess the normal agreement is the price or whatever that you're going to pay.
It's Chris Voss, by the way. I've just looked it up.
Thank you.
But yeah, and the point of the book, Never Split the Difference, I think is a really good one, because it is a technique that I've seen when I was when I was working with Tesco's. So they'll say, well, we want 50% margin, and you think, well, actually, I was only going in for like 30. So if they say, let's split the difference, that's 40. But actually, your toppest might be 38. So for them to go, let's split the difference, because they've set this ridiculously high target figure to start with, is really poor. And I actually do use that thought process a lot, where someone will, if someone says to me, let's split the difference, I always say no. Just
to see what happens.
Chris said say no. So.
How fantastic.
So
how do you get out of that situation?
Well, you then have to look at the reasons why you wouldn't split the difference. It's quite hard, actually, because some people think they're being generous, and they go, well, should we, you know, if you're buying a car, and they'll say, well, should we split the difference? Or I've had clients, I had one recently where someone was saying, well, can we split the difference? I went, oh, no, because you were asking too much to start with. But you've got to be careful, because then that seems a bit rude.
I love it. Oh, we could talk for this on hours, but we better not. Because I think, one, it would eliminate any reason for anybody to try and get your book, and they definitely should get your book. So I'm going to ask you the final question, which is, obviously, I've been asking questions, and you've obviously beautifully answered them, but there must be a question that you wish I had answered and I haven't yet. So, Karen, what's the question that I should have asked you? And obviously, you know the answer better than anyone else, so you better answer it for us as well.
What's the evidence that Buyerology works? I think is the question.
I think that's a lovely question. Is there a good case study that you can bring us?
There's lots of case studies I can bring. Certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, I've had clients come along to me, and they've said, oh, this is my business, and this is and I will turn around. I can remember one in particular, and I said, you don't really enjoy running this business, do you? Because you really don't like selling, because you're actually a real nice people person. And she went, you've only spoken to me for 5 minutes. How do you know that? And she got but she was very impressed. And we did end up working together for a very long time. And I did obviously explain to her afterwards. I said, well, I've just profiled you, and you're definitely a very green person, and you like getting on with people, and therefore you know, to sit across a buyer is going to be really hard. So what you need is someone like me to protect you and go in and do it for you. And that's what I do actually with a number of my clients. So that kind of is an example of the beginning of how it works. But certainly at the moment, I'm doing a lot more selling than I would normally do on behalf of clients. I normally just coach, but I've got a couple of people who came to me and said, well, would you do it for me, who are not born sellers? And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it, actually, to adapt to the different personalities. And I'm off to see Boots actually on Thursday, sitting on the other side of the desk selling toothpaste. So it's going to be quite interesting.
Fantastic. Karen, I mean, my immediate response is I can't believe that you won't get millions and millions of requests for that book, because
Well, if we get millions and millions, then we'll have to put a like no more than 50 people. 50 will be given away because we don't want the repeat of was it two?
Right there. That is your challenge. People watching at the moment, and if you're watching on replay, you may already be too late. Get that email to Karen at Buyerology, BUYEROLOGY.co.uk immediately to get your free copy of that book, because I think, Karen, that is a brilliant message. I love what you've been telling us. I love the way that you're helping to get people, and I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great.
Lovely. Now, look, if you would like to get an email from me letting you know about the wonderful people that are coming up on this podcast so you can watch live and get in before the offers disappear, go to this link, which is link.thecompleteapproach.co.uk/newsletter. That puts you onto our letter list. We will be sending you an email which gives you information about the upcoming webinars, the upcoming LinkedIn Lives, where you will hear wonderful people like Karen speak. And Karen, I just want to thank you once again for coming on and spending a few minutes, certainly educating me, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been great.